ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचना गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दं माधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। So we will share the screen, just a moment. So I hope the screen is visible to all of you. And yeah, it is visible, okay. So we will begin with our today's session, and as we begin all these sessions with a rewind quiz, so here it goes on your screens. So we request you to read the questions carefully and mark the correct answers. This is from the last session. So majority of you have already answered. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here we end the quiz, and there goes the results. So question number 1, why Arjun asked Lord Krishna to move his chariot between the two armies? So we saw in the last session that Arjun asked Krishna to move the chariot, take it in the center, and it was basically he wanted to see who all had come to fight with him and wanted to estimate the strength of the army. So 56% of you have got it right.
Also, by looking at this question, and some of you have answered option B, but please understand these all questions are with a very specific reference. What all we have discussed in previous sessions, the answers have to be based on those sessions. So sometimes we may feel an option is right, but that may not be the right option. So we have to refer to the old sessions. In case you are missing a session, please, we are posting the recordings. Please go through the recording. Next question is why Lord Krishna is called Bhakt Vatsala. So the correct answer is D, all the above. He is infallible. He cares for his devotees, wants to serve his devotees.
Moving to the next question, what is Gudakesha? So Gudakesha is Arjuna is being referred as Gudakesha, and that signifies that he has conquered sleep and ignorance.
And this point also we discussed in great detail in last session. Kesh, some of us have thought that it is hair, but it has nothing to do with hair. That comes from the word Isha or controller.
And the next question, both side Kurus were there. So that is true because this battle was a fratricidal war where it was a family battle basically. So they were all cousins belonging to Kuru dynasty.
Yeah, so which means that both the Kauravas and Pandavas were Kurus. Okay, so the next question, Guru of Arjuna. Dronacharya is a Guru of Arjuna, but not the only Guru. So Dronacharya is there, Kripacharya is there. Correct answer is both A and B. Both Dronacharya and Kripacharya were the Gurus of Arjuna. Dronacharya was a military Guru, and he is more popular, more well known, but both of them were the teachers of the Pandavas as well as the Kauravas. So the correct answer is C.
What was Arjun's reason to not fight? So compassion. So if you remember, we discussed C, D, E, and F so that we can easily remember. C as in compassion is the correct answer. Logical is not the answer. The correct answer is compassion.
So some of us have marked A and B. A was the right part, but B is not the right part. Next is Shakuni is Arjuna's uncle, and that is one answer which most of us have got right.
And the last question for the day, which symptoms of stress were visible in Arjun? So we saw that his limbs were quivering, his mouth was drying up, his skin was burning, and hence the correct answer is all of the above.
So some of you who have not got all the answers right, so now you know what is the right answer. So please make a mental note, please make a note on the paper.
So proceeding further with our today's session. So in the last session, we saw a part of reasons of Arjun for not fighting. So we remember that chapter 1 is divided into 4 sections, and today is the fourth and the last segment, which we would be covering in chapter 4. So today's thing is, like last session, we discussed about compassion and enjoyment, and today would be discussing about D and F.
Yes, so actually we saw in this whole section, which we have been discussing partially in the last session, as Sugiti was saying, Arjuna had concerns. He had fourfold concerns. What first concern was is that all these are my relatives. They will die in battle. So why should my relatives die? Why should my grandfather die? Why should my guru die? So he had so much of compassion for them. And then next he thought, if they will die, then what will I do? Even if I win the kingdom, with whom will I enjoy this kingdom which I'll win after killing them, after winning this war? And then after that he thought, if I kill them, in fact, not just I will not get enjoyment, but I will get sinful reactions. because killing of guru, killing of grandfather, killing of fathers and family members is sinful. So if I kill them, I'll get so much of sin, which means it'll lead to so much of suffering. And then finally he thought, then and what will happen to my dynasty? Not just me, but my whole dynasty. What legacy will we leave for them? So these are all the concerns which are going on in Arjuna's mind. And as Sukiti was saying, we are having this acronym CDEF. Actually, this is a series of alphabets. A, B, C, D, E, F. So C, D, E, F. So please remember C, D, E, F, the reasons for not fighting.
So we will start with shloka number 36. Papam eva shrayedasman hatvaitan atatayinaha tasmanaraha vayam hantum dhartarashtran sabandhavan swajanam hi katham hatva sukhina shyama madhava. So here we see that we have underlined one word, atatayinaha. So atatayinaha refers to the aggressors or to the people who attack us or those who try to hurt us. So here Arjun is talking about some such people who have tried to hurt him or attack him or harm him. And second interesting thing is in the last line we see Sukhina Shyama Madhava. So he is referring to Krishna as Madhav here. So in the last class, we saw how he was referring to him as Rishikesho. Here he is referring to Madhav. So please note whenever such things happen, because all these names are being called on a purpose. So we'll try to understand what's the purpose behind that. Let's see the translation.
So these are the translations of 36, 37, 38 verse. Arjuna is speaking these verses. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? O Janardhan, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? So here, as Sugidhi was pointing out in this verse, the atatayina word was used, and she was saying one who attacks us and others. So that word is actually translated here as aggressor. So Arjuna is clearly identifying the Kauravas as aggressors. He knows that it is not that he is in some delusion. He very clearly knows that they have been an aggressor against him and his family. But still he is saying, oh Krishna, oh Madhava, why you are asking me to kill them? So let's look at the insights from these three verses. So Madhav means husband of goddess of fortune, the husband of Lakshmi. So Lakshmi means one who gives us not just wealth but good fortune. So Arjuna is saying, you are Madhav, husband of goddess of fortune. Oh Madhav, why you are creating a situation of misfortune for me? All these friends and relatives are there. They are in front of me. And I will get so much of sin. So it will become so unfortunate situation for me. But you are goddess of fortune. So this is how Arjuna is addressing Krishna as. But we all know and we understand that Krishna is supreme personality of Godhead. And Krishna cannot create a situation of misfortune or bad fortune for anyone. Arjuna is a devotee. Forget a devotee. Look at any demon. Now Krishna killed so many demons. Krishna, right from the beginning, he killed Shakatasura and Putana, and then Trinavrata, and then Aghasura, and so many demons. And then later he killed Shishupal, Dantavakara, and so many of them were being killed by Krishna. Now please, and all of them, what did they receive? They received liberation. So Krishna, even to his enemy, Krishna is giving liberation, and many of them he is making them, taking them back to the spiritual world. So how can Krishna create misfortune for anyone? That's why Krishna only creates good fortune. So somehow Arjuna is, bewildered at this point in time, and he's making those statements. Second, he's saying that even if I kill these aggressors, if these aggressors are there. So there are 6 types of aggressors which I like to put in front of you. Srila Prabhupada talks about them in the purport. So these 6 aggressors are poison giver, somebody who gives poison, sets fire to the house, attacks with deadly weapon, plunders riches, occupies another's land, kidnaps one's wife. So if you see, out of these 6 types of aggressors, very clearly 5 types of aggression had been done by the Kauravas. So right in the beginning, Bhima was given poison. Poisonous cake was given by Duryodhan to him. And then later Pandavas was sent to a vacation house which is made of the Lakshagraha, and then that was put on fire. And then we know that how the riches were plundered in that gambling match. And then that gambling match was rigged. On purposefully, they designed a gambling match in which the Pandavas were bound to lose. And that's how they occupied his kingdom. And then later, in that, even the Panchali or Draupadi was dragged, their wife was dragged in it, and then she was made a slave. They at least tried to do that. So if we see that out of these 6, 5 kind of aggression had been done by the Kauravas against the Pandavas, and they were actually fit to be killed. That is what Artha Shastra says, that if anybody is an aggressor like that, he can be killed. And in fact, if you look at the current judicial system in India, if I don't know whether any one of you are a lawyer here with a law background, but the poison is actually punishable under Section 328 of Indian Penal Code, or setting house on fire is considered an offense under Section 436 of IPC. So actually all of them, if you look at, all of them are punishable under Indian Penal Code. Although current system of law does not punish it with death sentence, but at that time, if anybody does this, then he would be punishable by death. So it is very interesting actually. So right now, like we see, plunder riches and occupies another land. So many cases are there in courts. Maybe some of us are at the receiving end. Sometimes the uncle takes the property, sometimes brother takes the property, sometimes
we take the property.
We take the property, or sometimes some outsider takes the property, right? And then what only option that we have to do is go to the court and fight the case for 20 years, 30 years. After us, our son will fight. After him, his son will fight. And we don't know when the decision will come. But I'm just saying, and at that time, the justice was delivered, and justice was so strong that people will not even think of committing these aggressions again. So that's why the living conditions of the general citizens are very, very comfortable. In fact, I was discussing with someone, and he was saying that in Middle East, he was talking about his uncle in Qatar, and he was saying that it was that the place was so free of crime that they could even leave their cars and houses unlocked. Even at this in this age and time. So these are the aggressors which Arjuna is willing to forgive. So now let's move on to the balance 2 insights.
So we heard here Prabhu was explaining about Krishna as Madhava, and then he described in detail about 6 kinds of aggressor. Now if you see on the slide, the 3rd point says Dharma Shastra or Arth Shastra. So I'm sure all of us, majority of us, okay, some small children are there, but majority of us would know what is the meaning of Arth Shastra. So can you quickly type what is Arth Shastra? Have you heard that word Arth Shastra? Type it in the chat window if you know what is Arth Shastra. Okay,
yes,
so
Vaishnavi.
Shailendra, Vaishnavi, Avani and Niyati also know that. Oh, great. Vrinda, Apsara. So yes, so all of us know that it is economics. So now here on the slide, it is mentioned about economics. Now what is economics? Economics is running the economy. So
Kingdom.
Here, running the kingdom. So here it is mentioned Arthashastra. So now in the previous slide, where we were trying to understand the 6 kinds of aggressors, actually there is a book called Vasishtha Smriti. So in that Vashisht Smriti, all those 6 aggressors are listed. So we have took those lists from Vashisht Smriti, and then there is another book, law book for humankind called Manu Smriti. So according to Manu Smriti, it is quoted that those aggressors which are listed there in Vashisht Smriti, so those aggressors should be given suitable punishment and can be actually killed also. And there would be no sin which one incur if one is killing such an aggressor. So now Arjun understands this. Arjun is a prince and he knows all these things. He knows Arthashastra. He knows how to run the country. So he understands that, and yet he is saying that sins will overcome us. So now, does Arjun not know that Arthashastra, Vashisht Smriti, and Manu Smriti sanctions that they can be killed? So Arjun actually understands that, but then he is talking about Dharma Shastra here. So Dharma Shastra is the religious principle. So because economics is a little lower, so like if we are on a ladder, if we try to place them on the steps, like how you are keeping Golu these days. So if you want to keep it on the step, so Dharma Shastra comes on a lower rung, Arthashastra comes on a lower rung and Dharma Shastra goes on a higher pedestal. So here Arjun is talking about that though Arthashastra sanctions that, but because these people are my relatives, because they are my elders, and hence they are senior and worshipable, so that is why I should not kill them. So sinful acts, because he says that they are doing sinful acts out of greed.
Yeah, I mean, they are not able to see that how this war will lead to so much of large scale killing. Arjuna is able to list all the disadvantages of this war, but the opposite side, there's so much heart is full of greed, that they're not willing to look at these disadvantages of this war.
So when we proceed further, so here is a life lesson that lower principles can be compromised for the higher principle. So to understand this, let me give you an example. Let's say, like for example, next month we are beginning with Damodar month. So it's a very, very auspicious month, the Kartik month. So let's say you take a vow that in entire Kartik month, I will not tell any lie. So let's assume all of you have taken that vow that you would not lie. So one day you are sitting in your garden or you are sitting in your bungalow and suddenly somebody comes running and he says that he looks very frightened and scared and he says that there are people behind me and they want to kill me and snatch my money. So they request, this person requests you, let me hide in your room somewhere. And he goes and hides himself. And before you could understand and gather your thoughts, let's say within a minute or so, 2-3 men, like looking like gundas, they come there with a gun in their hand and they're asking you, did someone come running here? No, you have taken a vow. And your vow is honesty or truthfulness. So now what would you do? What do you think is a good course of action in such a situation? What is proper? Because you have taken a vow that you would not tell any lie. And here you have to save this person's life. Okay, so Saroja has mentioned there, tell lie. Girish says lie. So many of you are typing now that you would tell a lie. So what is happening is if you tell a lie, you are breaking your vow. So is that okay to break your vow? We have taken a vow to be truthful. So yes, it is okay to break the vow. Why? Because lower principles can be compromised for the higher principle. So in this particular case, saving somebody's life is placed at a higher pedestal compared to being truthful. So similarly here Arjun's situation, and Arjun is telling that Dharma Shastra is more important than Arth Shastra, and taking that into consideration, I would not kill him.
But Sugiti, wouldn't this wouldn't this be used as a license to always break the lower principle? Oh, no, I have some higher principle, so I'll break lower principle whenever I want.
So that is why it is very important that we consult these scriptures and we consult our spiritual authorities in choosing. Otherwise, it should not happen that I keep choosing the principles based on my preferences and liking. And we say, this is lower, this is higher, and we keep doing that. So that is not permitted.
Yeah, because at the drop of a hat, we feel, okay, it's easy to get away with this problem by lying. So because of higher principle, I'm lying here. Because of that higher principle, I'm lying there. So it should not be used as an excuse.
So Kishore has tried there, but by remaining silent, we need not do this also.
Yeah, if you can get away with those gun-wielding fellows by keeping quiet, we have no problems.
Okay, here is a message. Can the moderator reply? I want to join the class with WhatsApp number, how it is.
I think this is a private message from, it's VSAM, VEESAM.
Okay, so going ahead with shloka number 39. Kulakshaye pranashyanti kuladharma sanatanaha dharme nashte kulam kritsnam adharmo bhivavati uta. So here in this verse, kul. Now first word is kul. Kul means dynasty. Kul means family or the entire dynasty, the clan. So kulakshaya. Kshaya means destroying. Kulakshaya pranashyanti. Pranashyanti means completely gone, completely destroyed. How? What is getting destroyed? Kula dharma. Kula dharma means, like kul means family, so kula dharma means those religious traditions. So kula dharma sanatanaha. Now these kula dharma or the family traditions are actually sanatan or eternal. Dharma nashte kulam kritsnam. Dharma nashte means the religion is being destroyed. Dharma nashte kulam kritsnam, and the whole kulam is destroyed. And what happens to the whole kulam? Adharmo, the whole kula or the whole family gets into adharma or irreligious principle. So let's read the translation. With the destruction of dynasty, kulakshay pranashyanti, with the destruction of dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished. So there are some religious principles which come in the family tradition. So all those religious traditions, the family traditions gets vanquished by the destruction of the dynasty. And thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. So let's see what is the insight here.
So there are 3 points here: destruction of dynasty, family tradition is lost, and involvement in irreligion. So we understand that nowadays it is not so much being followed, but earlier the system was of varnashram. So varnashram means that people, according to their qualities, whether they're in mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, sattvagun, rajagun, or tamogun, accordingly they'll be performing some occupational duties. And they will also be in some ashram, either brahmachari or grahast or vanaprastha or sannyas ashram. So many of these religious traditions were part of the family as per the varnashram system. Why those traditions were there? So that the child, in fact, all of us, maybe some of us are aware, before the father impregnates the mother, there is a particular samskara which is done, which is called Garbhadan samskar. And once the mother is pregnant, then also there are different samskaras done at different times of pregnancy. And finally, the child is born, Jat Karma is performed, and then the different, mundan is done, the head shave, and the Annaprashan is done. Actually, Annaprashan is done before that. And when child grows further, then Vidya Arambham is done. So there are different samskaras which are done. And finally, there is marriage. And then at the end of life, there is Antim Samskar. So these are the different religious traditions which are followed in a family. Now, of course, if one does these properly, then also understands the spiritual value of human form. So that's why these traditions are very important. Now, again, we will have experience in our families that most of these traditions are actually implemented by our elders. So if we had a grandmother, grandfather, they would be telling, you should do this, you should do that. And the father would know, and when they pass away, then the parents will take up that responsibility, like that. So these traditions goes in the family line. So now, if the dynasty is destroyed, the elders are destroyed, or the ones who will execute these family traditions are destroyed, then the family tradition is lost, right? So the what samskaras have to be done this way, that way, so that all that is lost. So what will happen is the younger generation of the family, they may develop irreligious habits, and they may lose the chance for spiritual elevation. So that is the reason why Arjuna is so much of concerned that the younger members may be involved in irreligion. So he was that's why he was saying that killing the elders is a very sinful activity.
So moving further, here we have shloka number 40. Adharma bhibavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriyaha strishu dushtasu varnishya jayate varna sankaraha. So now here, this is another very important verse. And the last two words, if we see of this shloka, it says Varna Shankaraha. So Varna Sankaraha, it refers to unwanted population. So now here Arjuna is talking about how can all this lead, how can this battle lead to unwanted population? So we only understand that battle would lead to killing people, but here he is talking about battle leading to Varna Sankaraha or unwanted progeny. How is that? Adharma Abhivat Krishna. So Adharma, irreligion. Abhivat means increases. So he is telling, so this way, so like we read the verse number 39, so this is in continuation with that. So adharma or irreligion would increase Krishna. And when adharma or irreligion would increase, how is that increasing? Adharma is increasing because the whole dynasty, all the elders are destroyed. So all the elders are there at the battlefield now fighting, and this side or that side, but all the elders, majority of them would die. So then adharma would increase. So he's saying adharma abhavat Krishna pradushayanti kulastriyaha. Pradushayanti means pradushan, like pollution. So it will pollute. Whom will it pollute? Kulastriyaha. So that family, that kul or family whose male member have died and females are left behind, because of that rise in irreligion, those ladies would become polluted or would become unchaste. Strishu dushtasu varshneya. So strishu dushtasu means they are so polluted because of losing their chastity. Jayate varna sankaraha. So because of that, there would be unwanted population. So let's read the translation. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted. And from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. So we need to understand it very carefully. Now here we are talking about a war which is happening, which is a fratricidal war. So which means both the sides, it's the same family. So it's so unfortunate that the same family members are killing the other family members. I mean, everybody belongs to Kuru family only. So what is happening is, if there are opposite, like if it is not a fratricidal war, then still at least one side of family would remain. But here, ultimately, all the important, significant men who have assembled there at the battlefield, majority of them would die. So as they would die, there would be nobody left behind to pass on the family tradition or to ensure that the family is following the tradition. Because like in our families also, generally it is the grandmother or grandfather, the elders who tell us what is right, what is wrong, what should be done, what should not be done. A simple thing like if there is some Upanayinam happening in the family or wedding happening in the family, so generally the elders tell us what are the rituals which has to be performed. So now in this case, all the elders have gone. All the significant people have died. So what is happening is women are left behind. Nobody is there to tell them. So then they become unchaste, and that gives rise to Varna Shankaraha. So before we proceed further, because here we are talking about women, so we have a small and interesting exercise for you. Here there are only 2 questions coming up.
So yeah, we want you to read those questions carefully, think about, and then answer. Yes.
And you have to write like about the time when you were like probably just born till 3 or 4 years, like early childhood. So here it goes, two questions regarding your early childhood. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So with this, we would stop this and share the results with you. Which woman played the most significant role in shaping you up in your early years? So here 82% of us got it as mother, and 14%, the next highest is 14% for grandmother, because mother or grandmother are the ones who take care of the babies, especially in the early years. Okay. And the second question, what is the one aspect which makes her so important to you? So those of you who have chosen whichever mother, sister, grandmother, aunt, whatever you have chosen, one aspect which makes it so important to you is the love and care, which 89% of you have chosen.
And I think even in the second question, some of you picked up the second option, the independence she gave you. But the question was in your early childhood, the first 4 or 5 years. So that time the child is so much dependent on the mother. And what independence would the child actually ask for?
Yeah. So now let us process this, what we have done just now. So now here we are talking about the mother, the role of a mother in the life of a child. So I, being a psychologist, we have studied that, and we have seen that, also experienced that the most important years of a child, of a person's personality, the person actually gets shaped up. Most important impressions are gathered between 0 to 2 years. So we may not even remember that time, but the most important impressionable age of our life is that 0 to 2. Actually, the personality is formed, the biography is written during that time itself. And that is why we have so many things that when a lady becomes pregnant, it is told that like you should be happy. That is very, very important instruction which the doctor gives to the husband, to the family members, that try to keep this lady happy. Why? Because the impressions are getting formed in the child. And when the child is born, after that also 1 year, 2 year, I mean, most importantly, the baby needs mother for feeding, for taking care, because nobody understands you the way the mother does, because mother actually keeps you within herself. So that is the role of the mother. So here we have the insight that the most significant contribution of a woman in today's society is giving birth to good population and raising them with proper samskaras. Because at 0 to 2 year, or 0 to even 4 or 5 years, actually mother is the most important person in the child's life. So she is the one who can give birth to good population. So we may think that, okay, women liberation, women empowerment, and I have to be equal to men, and I have, what job is there which I cannot do? But we must not forget, we are the ladies or the women are the one who's shaping up the society. So whatever comes here, the next generation is being shaped by women, most importantly. That is what we saw, that like I gave you a few options there. Were you impressed by her career or by her personality? But no, most importantly, we are impressed by the love and affection what my mother gives me. So that gives me that confidence in myself, that makes me a very strong and confident and happy and enthusiastic person. So here is a life lesson, especially for all the women there. Preserve and cherish the uniqueness rather than comparing and equating oneself. Women are uniquely designed. Value the distinction. So women are unique. So let's stop comparing an apple to an orange. They are different. So the role of men and the role of women is quite different. And let's focus and let's relish on what we have, the uniqueness, rather than getting into the competition that I have to be as good as a man. Oh, we are different. We don't have to be good or bad. We are different. So hope that's clear. Moving forward to shloka number 41 and 42.
So again, these verses are being spoken by Arjuna. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. So Arjuna is moving on, and he's telling the problem that how the somebody may ask, okay, even if the women are unprotected and they become polluted and the unwanted population comes because of the destruction of the family dynasty, so what? So this is the next step. What happens? So he's saying the different family traditions will be stopped, like offering of the Pitra Puja or the worship of the ancestors, or serving the ancestors. I would use that word. It is serving the ancestors, because when we are born in a particular family, we actually also have our responsibility towards our forefathers. So like there is these Pitra Pujas and all. So what happens in those Pitra Pujas? There is an offering made to the Pitras or the forefathers. So if that tradition is stopped, then the forefathers, the offering that they get during that time is not given to them, and they fall down, and then they're not offered food and water, so they fall down from their position, and the whole family becomes very irreligious. So in this regard, I like to say make one point. See, forefathers, they may have been very religious, or they may not have been so religious. So which means many of them may be suffering in different wherever they are, because of their sinful activities. So what is recommended is during that process of offering them, first we should make Naivedyam, we should make an offering for Krishna or Vishnu. We should make an offering for the Lord, and that prasadam then we should offer to our forefathers. So it is described that how even if somebody has done very sinful activity, and because of that he has got a ghostly body, he does not have a gross body like us, and he's suffering so much. But if we offer Krishna Prasad, if you offer prasadam, offer to Lord Vishnu, then he'll be relieved of that sinful reaction. So that is the greatest service that we can actually render to our family and for our ancestors. So there is a very important life lesson I like to draw your attention. Irresponsible leader is also responsible. Irresponsible leader is responsible, but what is he responsible for? He is responsible for chaos in the society. So who is that irresponsible leader? Irresponsible leaders are those who break Sanatan Dharma, who disregard Sanatan Dharma, who blaspheme Sanatan Dharma, who ridicule Sanatan Dharma. Why? Because leader means he has followers, and if the leader and the followers don't have any faith, or they ridicule Sanatan Dharma, then actually they forget the purpose of this human life. What is the goal of my life? To develop love of God, to go back to the spiritual world. But then this is forgotten by the leader, by the follower. So the whole society actually becomes very chaotic, and there is so much misery and problems in that. And then we also have a very wonderful quote from Srila Prabhupada. It is in one of the purports. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of misery. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver. So if you love your family, if you love your, if you feel some responsibility towards your forefathers, if you want to benefit them, if you want to serve them, if you want to relieve them of the misery, become a devotee. So just by your becoming a nice, pure devotee of the Lord, the whole family, forefathers, everybody gets so much of benefit. Okay.
Utsanna kul dharmanam manushyanam janardana narake niyatam vaso bhavatiti anushruma. So now here Arjun is speaking. What he is saying, O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell. So now here two things are very important. One is the last word, Anushruma. Anushruma means hearing from disciplic succession or from a bona fide person. So hearing from a bona fide person, the message comes in the Guru Shishya Parampara. So the spiritual master, he gives instruction to his disciple, and in due course of time, this disciple becomes a guru and he passes on the instructions. So this is known as Anushruma, or hearing in the disciplic succession. So actually, yesterday we were checking out the Facebook messages. Many of you have sent so many messages for Prabhu's birthday. And one of the message, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but one of the message said, happy birthday to my bona fide Guruji. So it was very intriguing because I was very happy to notice that you are using that word bona fide. So bona fide is coming in the Guru Shishya Parampara. So if we will, when we will read chapter 4, we would see that how Krishna is actually emphatically stating about that parampara system. So the two insights for this verse is, one is about the disciplic succession. So Arjun is telling Krishna that don't think that it is all cooked up things what I'm saying. It is not my speculation. I have heard this in Guru Shishya Parampara, disciplic succession, Anushruma. And second is, he is talking about who resides in hell. So he is talking about, so if we go back here, he is saying, I have heard that those whose family traditions are destroyed, Utsanna kul dharmanam, whose family traditions are completely utsanna or spoiled or destroyed. So such people, what happens is they reside in hell. So this is what Arjun is stating in this verse. So in this series of verses, from verse number 39 to 43, actually, this is a conclusion. Six steps, we can say, 6 things. One is destruction of dynasty. So he is talking about this war which would destroy the Kuru dynasty, or the all significant member of Kuru dynasty would be destroyed. So second step would be, because of that destruction, the family tradition would be lost. And because of losing of those family tradition, Kula Dharma Sanatanaha, so that Dharma is Sanatan, but that is destroyed now. So the third step is irreligion increases. So rise in irreligion all around. And fourth is, because irreligion is increasing, people do not know the Dharma. So what they are getting is into unwanted progeny, or unwanted population is increasing. And the fifth one, because this is unwanted population, and nobody is there to train them in the principles of Dharma, because the dynasty is already destroyed. So what happens is they indulge into corrupt practices. And finally, because of all those corrupt practices, devastation of welfare activities. So this is what we are experiencing in today's society. because corrupt practices are there all over, and that is why even the so-called welfare activities, we are not really sure if we are giving donation and where the money is going and whether actually welfare is happening or it is another way of corruption. And we keep hearing so many scams opening up. So why it is happening is, this is the reason: unwanted population, dharma is not there, corrupt practices are there, and devastation of welfare activities. So this in turn is Varna Sankara, or the fourth reason what Arjun gave for not fighting.
So we can see that how thoughtful Arjuna is. Simply, we can very clearly see that it is not some fear. He is a very brave warrior, but these are such reasons, that thoughtful reasons he is giving why he does not want to fight. Okay, so let's look at the last 3 verses of this chapter. So please gather your attention and focus. These verses are also spoken by Arjuna, the 44 and 45th verse. 46th verse is being spoken by Sanjay. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. Driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness, we are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Sanjay said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. So, actually, this is nothing new. If you look at history, there are so many times, so many people have killed the king, killed their father, and usurped the property, usurped the kingdom also. So the selfish people have set up so many examples in the past where they've killed people for their own selfish motives. But here we see that Arjuna is such a saintly personality. Can you imagine? We discussed all those aggressors. Kauravas throughout their life have given so much trouble to the Pandavas. But here, when Arjun has a chance for revenge, because of his being soft-hearted, because of him being actually a devotee, because of his saintly character, Arjuna is saying that I should not fight. And he's saying, better for me is that Dhritarashtra's sons, because they are aggressors, they won't mind. They will take the weapons and kill me, even if I'm unarmed, which is actually against the Kshatriya code. But Arjuna is saying, I will bear that also. Let them kill me, right? So why these verses, these 2 verses are significant is that Arjuna is soft-hearted, he's kind-hearted, and he's engaged in devotional service of Krishna. Therefore, he is the right person. He's qualified to receive the spiritual knowledge. He has come to the right point. He's so much disturbed, but his heart is soft and full of compassion, and he is devotee of the Lord, right? He is not going against Krishna, right? He is submissive to the Lord, and therefore he is the right person to receive this spiritual knowledge. And that is how we'll see in the beginning of 2nd chapter that how Arjuna surrenders, accepts Krishna as his teacher, and then actually begins the instructions of the Lord. So let's look at quickly the insights. 1, Arjuna, because he is saintly, devotee of the Lord, soft-hearted, he does not want to perform the sinful act for his personal enjoyment. He feels that killing of relatives is sinful, so he does not want to do that for his personal enjoyment. And he's saying, let me get killed and unresisted. I will not resist, let me get killed. And therefore he casts aside his bow and arrow. So now imagine, where is Krishna and Arjuna talking? Are they talking in some room in a palace? No. They are stationed in the middle of a battlefield where there are several crore warriors assembled for this war. And every one of them knows about Arjuna. And they know how great a warrior he is. And not just those crores of warriors there are also celestials who are in the sky. All of them are waiting for this battle to begin. And in the middle of that, that battlefield, Arjuna is casting aside his bow and his arrow. He's not convinced that he should go ahead with this fight. So much he is overwhelmed with grief. So this is what we can see in these verses.
And with this verse, we have completed our first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And here is a quick recap, and request you not to leave the meeting, because after recap, we have few very important announcements. So now this chapter is divided into, we saw how this chapter is divided into 4 sections. The first section was from verse number 1 to 11, setting the scene, where we heard about 2 specific personalities. One was Dhritarashtra, and we saw how Dhritarashtra was fearful, doubtful, and partial. And second, we heard about Duryodhan, and we saw that how he was bragging about his team members, and he was doubting his loyal men like Drona and Bhishma. So this was the first section.
Then the next section is that Krishna is all auspicious. That is from verse 12 to 20. And we see here that after Bhishma blew his conch shell and all the Kaurava armies, they blew up different instruments, kettle drums and other war instruments. Then that's the time when Krishna blew his conch shell, Arjuna blew his conch shell, followed by the other Pandavas and the other prominent fighters from the Pandava side. And we also saw so many symptoms or signs of victory for the Pandavas. And all that uproarious sound of the conch shells broke the heart of the Kauravas.
And then there was this third section where we learned about Lord loves his devotee, verse number 21 to 27, where we heard that Arjun actually asked Krishna to take the chariot in the middle. Krishna takes the chariot and parks it right in front of Dronacharya and Bhishma. And here in this particular section, we learned about the wonderful qualities of Krishna, as how Krishna is infallible, how he is a humble order carrier, how he is dependable, and how he serves his devotees.
And the last section, which recently just now we have covered, reasons for not fighting. So first one was compassion, or for all my relatives are going to die. And then if they will all die, how will I enjoy? And by killing my relatives, I'll incur sin, and that will also destroy the family tradition. So the whole reason which Arjuna is giving is all about me and mine, I and mine. So that is how he's just thinking about himself.
So though we saw that in the second section, there were certain signs of victory, like for example, presence of Hanuman, or the chariot gifted by Indra,
white horses,
or the white horses gifted by Chitraratha, or what else? He being addressed as Madhava. So all these were actually various signs of
Krishna
victory.
Was on the side of
Krishna being on the side of Pandavas, the heart of the Kauravas getting shattered. So there were so many signs of victory in the second section, and yet by the time we reach the fourth section, Arjun is actually thinking of not fighting. So these are the 4 reasons which he gives here, and the 5th reason he will be giving shortly in the next session when we open up with the second chapter. So now, as I told you, there are 2 very, very important discussion announcement towards which I would like to
draw your attention,
grab your attention, not only draw, like literally grab your attention towards these 2 announcements. We can stop the share. So these 2 announcements, one is, can you quickly type it down, which is the most fantastic festival which is coming up shortly, which we are waiting for? Okay, so Dussehra, most of us are celebrating either today or tomorrow, but incoming
Diwali.
Yes, so many of you are writing Diwali, and we know, though I am from North India, but I am stationed here in South India, and in North India or in South India, everywhere, Diwali is a huge festival, and we have lots and lots of celebrations on Diwali. So this Diwali falls in the next month, and every month, the month in which Diwali falls, that month is known as Kartik or Damodar month. And this is the most auspicious month in the entire calendar, the Damodar month. So the Damodar month in ISKCON, we celebrate it with we celebrate Diwali for 30 days. So we want you to join us in our Diwali celebration, not only for the Diwali day, but for the whole month. And so for this, we would be launching a special program, which we'll be announcing through the WhatsApp group. So we are sure that you are already a member of the WhatsApp group. So we would be sending the details, and we request you to pass on that Damodar month related announcement to as many people as you can. Please spread it far and wide. So this Damodar month begins officially from November 1st. So on November 1st, we are organizing a special Damodar Puja where all of you can participate, and all of you can also invite whatever numbers you want to participate in this Damodar Puja. And we would be explaining you how this Damodar Puja is done. As of now, what I can tell you is keep your lamps, like how we decorate our houses with a diya or the lamp in Diwali. So keep those many number of lamps ready with you on November 1st, as many house members you have in the house. So like, for example, you have your father, mother, brother, sister, so 4 lamps. So like that, those many number of lamps you keep ready, and look on for our announcement. We would be announcing shortly. We are coming with a bang for the Damodar month. So that was one announcement. And second thing, now Diwali festive. Okay, we are all excited and we are typing the messages there. Now again, I want you to pay your attention here, and I want you to type yes or no, depending on what do you feel. Like, we have completed chapter 1 now. So how many of you feel that your course facilitators are putting in some hard work in preparing these presentations? So how many of you feel that we are putting in some hard work and we are able to serve you nicely? So there are 212 logins there. So I'll wait all the 212 logins to respond. If you feel that your facilitators are putting in whatever good work they can. So nice to see all of you writing yes, great effort, excellent, best effort, great, fantastic. Okay, so now, so the point was not that we wanted to hear our, I mean, if we are putting in hard work or not, but this was just to remind you that because we are putting in hard work, so we expect you also to put in hard work. And now, how can you put in that hard work? So we have already uploaded a quiz on studygeeta.com on chapter number 1. And we want each one of you. So 212 login may mean around 400 of you are watching now. So we want each one of you to log in at studygeeta.com separately, go to this particular course and take the quiz. So the quiz is already uploaded there. So you have to take the quiz for the entire chapter 1. So how we were doing for our GME or BYME, here it is a difference. We will be sharing the quiz only at the end of a particular chapter. So that chapter end quiz is uploaded there. Congratulations to each one of you for successfully completing chapter 1. So only 17 chapters more and we will complete it happily, enthusiastically, before we will know like how chapter 1 is completed, before we could realize. So we will continue that. So we request all of you to kindly log in there and attempt the quiz. In case you have any difficulty in accessing the quiz, my email ID is sukirti@studygeeta.com. I want you to directly write it to me and I will personally see into the matter as what is the challenge and why you are not able to do that.
And Sukirti is not giving one tip. Like for every exam, there are tips. Before you go in for the exam, there is a tip. Please review those notes that we have shared with you, the class notes. You review your own notes and the class notes that we have shared with you. Just go through them. It will not take more than 5 or 10 minutes because most of it, if you have been regularly attending the sessions, you will recall most of the information there, and then you attempt that quiz. It is not difficult, but it requires presence of mind and regular being connected to this program. Then you can easily get 100 out of 100.
Actually, that is your target. You should aspire for 100 out of 100.
Centum. Yes.
So, okay, thank you very much. Damodar, announcements we would be sending you shortly over the WhatsApp group and through the emails. Also, we are organizing a special Dasahara Puja for the Study Gita registered users. I am sure you would have received the SMS. We have sent the SMS. I hope you have received the SMS. We would also share the same link at your WhatsApp group also, so you can fill in the family member details.
As we told in the beginning that we are celebrating Dashera tomorrow, the day when Dashmi and the 11th Tithi merges, the Ekadashi Tithi merges, touches each other. That's when we are celebrating Dashera. That is tomorrow.
So someone is asking, is there 100 question in the quiz? Krishita is asking, no, there are only 25 questions.
Yeah.
So now with this, we officially end our today's session. We have completed our today's session. So those of you who want to stay back and you have something to talk to us, we are available here for another 25 minutes till 12:30. We are available. So if you have anything, we can discuss. Lata Ramchandran, we would be sending it on the WhatsApp group also. Hope you are there in the WhatsApp group. So you can fill in the form there if you have not received the SMS.